Okay, welcome. Hello, I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. Today, I'm super excited to introduce our guest, Deborrah Ashley. Welcome, Deborrah. I'm super happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Heather. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, Deborah is she's first of all, she's got a history in marketing. I'm so excited about this because Deborah, I don't know if you know this yet. We haven't chatted for that long, but I'm a super fan of LinkedIn. Like I do so much connecting on LinkedIn and I love it as a platform. And I'll just be clear that I do not love the other platforms. Shh, I know for people listening. Uh, I will get on Instagram because I'm a former photographer and I love pretty pictures, but LinkedIn is by far my favorite place to connect. And so for people listening, I'm actually super excited to have Deborrah here. She's a marketing strategist, a consultant, and a LinkedIn trainer who works with clients to develop B2B and B2C LinkedIn strategies that grow and develop not only their business, but their personal brand as well. Deborah has a background that includes 2 decades in brand management, marketing communications, and business development, where she used her unique style of positioning and launch strategies to generate over $300 million for companies and startups. She has been featured in a variety of media, including Oprah Magazine, Black Enterprise Magazine, the New York Times, on podcasts, and CNBC for her innovative strategies on gaining a competitive edge and building strategic partnerships, and has spoken at summits, conferences, and universities. So Deborah was introduced to me through a mutual friend, and I know that anybody she sends my way is phenomenal. But Deborah, I feel like I have a lot to learn from you, so I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share, especially about LinkedIn with someone who loves LinkedIn.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. Well, and I'm not a master at it. I will say that I've developed my own little strategy for connecting with people. And my goal really primarily is to get any of my new connections onto the phone with me. Like, I just want to know them as a person. I joke, I tell them, like, I want you to be in my Rolodex and I want to be in your Rolodex. Like, I don't want to be just another online person on a list, right? And so I actually love connecting with LinkedIn because when it's successful and when you make those connections, they've been really, really powerful connections. I feel like awesome people are on LinkedIn and they take it seriously. So talk to me, let's back up. I know LinkedIn is, you're an expert in that, and it sounds like it's a lot of what you're doing now. Talk to us a little bit about how you got started in marketing, in business. Where did your roots begin?
absolutely. So, my roots actually began in the fashion industry. This was from undergrad. I'm from New York. I grew up in New York. So, naturally, well, I'm not going to say that's every little girl's dream to play with fashion, right? But it was one of my dreams. It was either sports, because I was a manager for the men's basketball team, or it's to play in fashion in New York. So I actually ended up working in economic development for fashion designers in New York, obviously made in America type fashion designers.
Mm.
And it's always been that entrepreneurial spirit. But I'm also quite a nomad. So I left New York. I went to Philadelphia, then I went to Atlanta, then I went to Tampa, Florida. But I worked for a while for a variety of companies, and one was Ideal Image, where I spent 10 years. And then one day I woke up and I was bored. So, and during that time too, I worked for the Small Business Development Center. So I know how to build businesses and I know about
Mm.
brands. So I figured I have this 20-year background in marketing. Why not do this on my own and build my own business? And then I discovered this whole amazing world of, online business owners. I didn't even know it existed. I was actually on Instagram. So I was on Instagram. I've always been on Instagram, and I was just sharing content. This is while I was still in the corporate, quote unquote, corporate world.
Yep.
Someone tagged me in a post. It was a realtor looking for someone to help them with marketing. And I was like, oh, wow, people are actually reaching out to people that they've never met in their life to help them with their business. So 6 months later, I gave my notice and I left a 20-year career to start this on my own. So
Wow.
clearly it was nothing like I expected. So of course I just ended up being online and I was just lurking. I wasn't doing anything. Everyone was screaming it from the mountaintop that they were experts in their field. And me with my fabulous, decades of experience, I didn't feel like an expert at that point. So to make a long story short, I went over to LinkedIn just to update my profile and just to, change from the corporate world to business owner. And I made a lot of different updates. And within 2 days, someone reached out to me and they wanted help with a marketing plan. So once again, like I almost went into self-sabotage mode, but I realized there's this whole world on LinkedIn of people who are great at what they do. They're just not great at marketing what they do. And that's where it began. That's pretty much where it began.
Awesome. Well, there's a couple pieces I want to dig into. One is the leap you made, right? So you had all this experience, you had like that's a big leap to
Yeah.
leave that and walk away and go out on your own. What was that like? What did it take for you to make that leap?
Here's the interesting thing. I had people telling me, oh my gosh, you're so brave, you're so ambitious. It didn't feel like it was a big deal.
Mm.
I was probably that bored. Like I was probably one of the top revenue generators in the company, and I'm an innovator by nature. So I get bored by things. So the great thing about what I'm doing now, it's a challenge because I'm working with a lot of different people and their
Mm.
business. But when I was working for the one company, I was doing the same exact thing every single day. And, you know, I just knew how things were going to turn out. So I just needed to do something different. So no, it was just, I had enough money saved. So I think that's a big deal when you have that level
Mm.
of income. I paid off my car, paid up a few things, and I had about a year's income to kind of play around with. So no, it was just a, almost like an everyday thing for me. But I think that's also my personality where,
Yes.
I was told I just celebrated my 50th birthday and I had a virtual birthday party and everyone, they kind of like had friends and family who came on and they're like, oh, Deborah always, she moved to a beat of a different drum. I never knew I was like that, but yeah,
Mm.
I don't think twice about things when it's time to make a decision. I think that makes a great CEO and a great business owner.
Oh, I love that. Well, and I love that it was just the obvious next thing for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems like it does suit your personality. If you are an innovator, like I could imagine being in one spot for too long feels a little constraining. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and this, I find it fascinating, this online world of business, right? People, and I call it the information entrepreneurs, right? And it's the industry that I serve, coaches, consultants, online experts and educators, speakers and authors. But I find that so many people are either aware of this world or they're still not. Like they're not even aware that like there's this whole massive sub economy of what I call information entrepreneurs, like doing amazing business in this space, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about your early foray into that world of like figuring out like, oh my gosh, this whole online world thing and people need me and I can do this. What was that
Right.
like?
So yeah, so I was on Instagram. I got clients almost immediately just because, there's this whole conversation people have too, especially when you work with certain coaches. Don't give it all away. Tell them the what, but not the how. But I didn't know anything about that. So I would just share everything. Um, and this is a great thing for others to realize. When you share everything, you have a large percentage of people who don't know what to do anyway because they're overwhelmed with a lot of information. So they're going to reach out to you. So yeah, it was doing really good on Instagram. And then someone told me about this group on Facebook. And I was like, what's a Facebook group? So I got into the world of Facebook and Facebook groups. And of course, it's a rabbit hole. By the time I was just in 2 groups, and within 3 weeks, I was in maybe 20. So that's where I ended up. It's like almost like you develop this imposter syndrome. I didn't even know what that was. But everyone was an expert and everyone was talking about how much money they were making lying on the beach and sipping cocktails and all of that fabulous stuff. So of course I was just lurking and I didn't think that I could measure up to what everyone was accomplishing because it's not like I was making a lot of money. I was still just starting out in business. But I would start to answer questions about Instagram and marketing when people would put things out there, and you get a lot of bad advice in these groups too, by the way. So I'm not afraid of saying no. This is actually the right way. And one day this woman said to me, you seem to know a lot. Like, how do you know all of this stuff about marketing and business? And I told her about my background. And so she said, why are you lurking? If I had your background, I'd be fully booked right now. And that kind of woke me up. So from
Mm.
there, I was still self-sabotaging with a few things. Like people would reach out to me for me to be in their summits, and I just wouldn't fill out the forms. So I was sabotaging myself in that manner, but I just started to put myself out there a little bit more.
Mm. Well, and this concept of sabotage, because what I'm curious, I mean, you obviously came with all this wonderful experience and knowledge, but anytime we're making a shift and I think we're looking at like a new area, it's really easy, especially when it comes to work, like a new area or a niche of work. I think it's easy to have our blinders on and think like, oh, it's just this, like, this is the work, this is what I need to bring to, and we forget like about the richness of our histories and our
Right,
backgrounds and all the skills we can bring to the table. So
right.
I'm curious if it was really self-sabotage or just that kind of natural process of easing into a new area of work where it just takes a bit to realize like, oh, you can bring your whole self to your work. You've got all this other stuff that you can show up with, right?
Yeah, most likely. That's why I think it took, I almost like, I think this is what happens as women. We almost have to give ourselves permission to
Mhm.
not be modest because for me, I'm Caribbean too. So it's almost like, don't brag about everything you're doing. So I went from like someone who's super modest in the corporate world where I would close like six-figure deals.
Yeah.
And I would just go back to work because that's natural, and there would be like, this is like men versus women, how the dynamic is. One guy would change his voicemail, and all of a sudden there was an office party because he changed his voicemail. So I think I had to learn how to, and I'm no longer modest at all. I had to learn how to be okay with
Mhm.
sharing that I've been in Oprah magazine and all of that stuff without
Mhm.
feeling uncomfortable. And I never
Mm.
see that as a big deal, but I remember I would go to networking events and I would just share about how, Oprah magazine called me to do like a feature on X, Y, and Z. And like, I would see women with their mouth like wide open for like 3 seconds. And I was like, okay, I guess it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, I think, especially with high achievers, I think we don't realize that the work we do, how impactful it is. So we
Mhm.
have to like connect with different people for them to almost give us permission that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is something to that, the high achieving aspect. And I think there also is a gender dynamic there, right? I think that for sure, as women, it takes, for whatever reason, it just takes a little bit more effort to put ourselves out there in a way of like, yeah, this is who I am, really good at doing this thing, or I got, whatever, I got where I am today because of my skills and my smarts and whatever else.
Right.
It's so much easier for men to be really forthcoming about that stuff, and I feel like it's just a slightly longer road for women to get there often, right?
You're right.
But once
We're there.
we're there, and things really change, right? Talk about the difference between being there versus being on the journey there, right? How things shift in business.
Sure. Yeah. Well, here's the interesting part about it. So this comes with pricing your products too.
Mm,
Because, and this is for those who are kind of just starting out online, you think you're a beginner online, but you're not. You could have
mm.
10 or 20 years of experience, but you think you only have 1 year of experience, right?
Yes. Yes.
So then I went from pricing like 3-month projects for $800, which just ridiculous. And I remember when I was working on a project for someone, I developed their marketing plan for, just to get in front of a corporation. And he closed a $15,000 deal with it. So that's when it kind of smacked me in the face like, oh, so he put in $800 and he got 15,000 back. Of course, he wanted another marketing plan from me, and I quickly increased my prices, and he
Yeah.
was happy about that.
Mm.
So, I think it's about understand, and I think we all have to experience this in our own way because I had
Mhm.
several coaches, just not necessarily that they wanted to take me on as a client. They were just in my inbox saying, listen, you have this amazing experience. Why are you charging so low?
Yeah.
Um, so I think everyone gets to it at their own time.
Yes.
You're able to get to it, whether having conversation, with you or listening to us talk about it, it's going to be a good thing. But if you're
Mm.
not, something's going to happen that's going to make you wake up. And
Hmm.
some people probably need to learn differently.
Well, and it's true that, the something's going to happen part, often, and what I see, especially on the legal side, because I end up helping people with problems and, resolving things. I mean, we all do in our own way. We're helping somebody with some type of problem. And for me, a lot of some of the additional coaching that I provide in the legal work is around business boundaries, clarities, like fostering relationships that are healthy, being able to identify like a red flag client, right? And when we don't know our value in business and when we're not priced appropriately, what ends up happening is we have a string of what I call red flag clients that
Mhm.
quickly inform us that like that's not what we want to be doing at that price level, right? And so yes, sometimes we just get there through experience and we realize our own value through some other painful other painful paths.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So how did you end up becoming focused on LinkedIn?
So, what I was doing, so I was still playing around on Facebook because that feels safe for most
Mm,
people. Um, I met a lot of people in Facebook groups there, but I was doing my business on LinkedIn. So and this was just for myself. That's where I would get a lot of clients, and then of course and I'm a person, I'm a giver and a sharer.
mm,
So I would start to tell people, and most people are intimidated by LinkedIn. You have to come on LinkedIn. It's almost like people just want help. No one wanted to do it. And I almost wonder too if people were wondering, okay, what's the scam? Why is she telling us to get on LinkedIn? Like, why is she giving this away for free? Because I know other people were on LinkedIn, but they weren't sharing that information, almost like I'm going to get all the pot of gold.
mm-hmm.
So then I started to have people reaching out to me, and I was just inviting them to come to LinkedIn to see what it was about. But then they started to reach out to me to ask me, how can I help them get to where they need to go on LinkedIn and get in front of the right people? And I didn't think anything of it, but then I started to see some, the overnight experts. I started to see the overnight experts talk about just some really horrible, bad advice on what to do on LinkedIn. I said, no, that's not the way it works. It doesn't work that way. So then I started, and I'm not afraid to use my voice. So then
Mm-hmm.
I became this voice of LinkedIn and, making sure that you're getting the right information so you're not falling on your face and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I became like the LinkedIn black belt. So
Well,
I,
yes, I love it. And you made a point about people feeling intimidated about getting onto LinkedIn, right? What do you think that's about?
I think it's about that safety of, um, how can I put it? They don't feel that they know enough. So
Mm,
probably the same as how we all feel when we kind of first got online. So they may think that LinkedIn's too stuffy, that LinkedIn's too professional, that people won't respect them because they don't have enough education or experience or XYZ. Versus when you're on Facebook, I quickly realized it doesn't matter that you have 15 degrees, or it doesn't matter that
mm,
you have 5, 10, 15 years of experience. Kind of like if they see that you have results, or if they like you, they'll do business with you. But clearly on LinkedIn, they pay attention to certain things. So I think it's
got
a
it.
combination of the whole, you just don't know if you know enough,
Mm,
or you feel it's a stuffier crowd, which LinkedIn used to be. It used to be about resumes and recruiters and all of that stuff. But once Microsoft bought it, and of course, in the past 3 years, it's been this amazing shift of content creators, and now it's it's a cool place to hang out.
yes, it's my favorite place to hang out when I have time to, go do stuff in social media platforms online. And like Facebook is fun for me to hang out like on a personal perspective. The reason I started Facebook is so I could get on and like see pictures of my sister's kids or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right,
But LinkedIn is super fun for business. It's
right.
really, really fun for me for business. So for people that are new-ish to LinkedIn or wanting to explore it more, first of all, talk to us a little bit about what makes LinkedIn different and what is one thing that they can be doing to utilize LinkedIn the right way.
Sure, definitely. Well, the great thing about LinkedIn, and it's growing so quickly now, up
Mm,
until, because I do a lot of presentations. Well, at least I used to, but before this, right?
right.
When we could play outside, I used to do a lot of presentations to different groups on LinkedIn, and what to expect and how to get started. So up until February, there were only 660, I should say only, but 660 million registered users on LinkedIn. Clearly with the pandemic and a lot of companies shifting onto LinkedIn, it has grown. Up until last month, there is now 700 million.
Wow.
So that's a lot. Not to say that everyone, obviously, who are registered, that they're using the platform actively, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the great thing about LinkedIn, it is the largest, global website or platform for business only.
Mm-hmm.
So you may think of Instagram, the pretty pictures, you do business there too, but it's mostly pretty pictures and everything else. Same with Facebook, you can do business there, but then you have your dogs and your kids and your cats. But LinkedIn people are only there for business, so there's no mistake
Mm-hmm.
about it. When you're there, no one's going to waste your time. Things I had to learn, and these are kind of like the difference between any of the other platforms and LinkedIn. If someone reaches out to you and they say, "Hey, can you give me a call today? I'd love to talk to you about my product, my business." It's not about giving them a link to your calendar now. If you're available, give them a call because that means they're ready to go. So
Mm-hmm.
I've lost a lot of business doing it the other way. Well, hey, why don't you book with me with something next week? And of course, they wanted to start right now. So one thing that most people, that I would always encourage everyone to do if they are just starting on LinkedIn, whether they're just starting or if they've been on there for 10 years, go in and make sure your profile is updated. Make sure it's not
Mm-hmm.
reading like a resume. Make sure that it's buyer focused or buyer centric,
Yes.
meaning you're sharing your narrative, you're sharing your story, but it's very focused on what your potential customer, your potential buyer is going through right now, and how you're the solution to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about making sure that you stand out as an industry expert and a resource, because once you become that resource that they want to go to each and every time, they trust you and you're naturally on top of, you stay top of mind. So the biggest thing you can do right now, if you have not logged into LinkedIn or if you have not updated your profile, make sure it's not in the third party. It shouldn't be, Heather likes to do X, Y, and Z. Heather has a podcast. Like, let's leave that up to the books, right?
Right.
Writing a book. Make sure that there's a little section on top. It's your URL. That's part of the
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn URL. Make sure that is not just there's numbers after
The
your name. Make
assigned.
sure that
Yeah.
you have that branded. Make sure that your cover image is not the default blue background. Create something, it's almost like you're a real estate. Create something that's going to really speak to your story in a visual way.
Mm.
And those are the main things I would say. If you want to start getting engaged so people can start to see you, I would say find maybe 3 or 4 major influencers that your market looks to for advice and engage on their posts. Like if you don't want to
Mm.
start posting anything because, oh my gosh, I don't know. Most people are afraid of content anyway. I guess I'm considered a content creator. I put out content every single day, except weekends. But if that's a fair, if you need to figure out what type of content to put out, I would rather you share something from someone who's an influencer, and not like an Instagram influencer, but like for me, my people, they love Brene Brown, they love Mark Cuban, so people like that,
Mm.
or comment on their post. Typically, and Gary Vee is another one that people love. But typically, I can comment on someone's post, and I'll get a bunch of people who reach out to me to connect with me, just because
Mm.
of the conversations that I'm starting based on that post.
Oh, that's such great advice because I feel like people are intimidated by LinkedIn and especially around using it as a platform for sharing content. While they might use it to connect, even like myself, I've really underutilized it as a place to share content and I've mostly utilized it as a connection tool,
Right.
right? So what holds people back from expressing their thought leadership on LinkedIn?
Well, so 2 things, good and bad. Typically, when I
Mm.
first get a client, it's so interesting. When I first get a client and say we may not start for another 2 weeks, they'll stop doing everything. Like they almost don't want to mess it up. And it makes sense to me because here's the thing. There is a potential that if you're putting the wrong things out there, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong, but sharing content that's not relevant to your market, you could potentially water down your brand. So I
Mm.
think having a great content strategy, having a great flow, understanding why and everything should be strategic and intentional. So understanding why you're putting out a particular piece of content and who you're looking to target with it is going to be key. So I think a lot of people, they just don't do anything because they think
Mhm.
they're going to mess up. And yeah, I think LinkedIn is probably a platform you don't want to mess up, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big reason.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I think, and maybe you can talk to us a little bit about this. People get a little bit afraid of the algorithms, right? Like if I don't understand how this platform does it differently from these other platforms, like, yeah, I'll get shoved to the bottom or get penalized or whatever for being a terrible content creator. What do you know about the algorithm on LinkedIn? Like what is working for people right now?
Okay, so we'll talk about some do's and don'ts.
Yes, I would love
So
that.
I have this in my book too, which is kind of cool. Like I have, what are the things that get the most engagement? Is it video? Is it long form content? Is it a slide deck? Are there images? So when we think about the algorithm, obviously the job, just like on any other platform, LinkedIn is a free platform when we think about it. You
Mm,
can get Sales Navigator, which is $80 a month, which can get you really connected to like the CEOs and get you really targeted. But
mm,
in essence, it's a free platform. The entire job for LinkedIn is to build revenue, and they build revenue from the advertisers. So if you're doing anything that's going to cause the members to leave the platform, they're going to cut your reach. So one thing that I see a lot of people doing that will cut their reach is they put a link to wherever into their actual content versus in the comments. So
mm.
what's going to happen when that algorithm sees a link, and obviously a link is it's clear what a link is. It's going to say, I'm not going to share this with too many people because now we can't say to our advertisers, we have 80% of CEOs making $500,000 a year that spends, in, let's say, 20 to 30 minutes on the platform. They're going to say they spend 5 minutes on the platform, and that's what advertiser cares about that, right?
Mm,
So that's one thing. Another thing that the algorithm loves, and you know, hashtags, they're fairly new on the platform. They're about a year and a half old,
mm,
but hashtags are a great way for you to not only track what content you're putting out. So you want to create like your personal hashtag. Like mine is hashtag the LinkedIn Black Belt. So if someone goes and searches that, they can see everything that I've ever put out. Well, they won't find everything because of how LinkedIn's set up, but mostly everything that I've put out is under that hashtag. So you want to put your personal hashtag, and you want to put maybe 2 or 3 that's going to be relevant to your market, and you can change it up at different times. So the great thing is, let's say someone, if they're in finance and they want to see what's the latest in finance news, and you report on that. And I always say, treat yourself almost like it's a media platform and you're the reporter, because you have your target audience and you're going to show up for them as this educator and an advocate, and you want them to now see you as the person they go to for all of their news and their resources and their strategies. So now you want to find that hashtag that's going to target your market, and then just you'll probably have 2 or 3, but of course leave your personal one. The great thing that I love with your personal one, you can have people follow the hashtag. So
mm.
yeah, so you can say, follow me at hashtag the LinkedIn Black Belt for more LinkedIn tips and strategies, and you can have people to start to follow you. So that's another thing, the hashtag super important. What's going to happen with the algorithm? And it's all about, is this person a desirable person? Are they keeping more people on the platform? So when you think about how they kind of rank it, a like is okay, right? You can scroll by and like someone's post. It doesn't
Mhm.
take much effort. However, if someone likes and comments, now that's going to take some time because they're actually putting thought into it. But then you have that third level. You like, you comment, and then someone else is sharing your work. Now the algorithm is like, oh, wow, more people are interested in this. This is relevant. Let's give this girl another push. And then you have people having conversations within your
Mm.
content. So, and then a great way for you to kind of do this, if you reply to, say, a post that I put out, and you say, oh, great tips, thank you for sharing, I can either say, you're welcome. Like sometimes I'm an introvert, so sometimes I'm like, you're welcome. I don't want to have excessive conversation. Or I can say, what tip was your favorite?
Mhm.
So now you're encouraging more conversation. So those are some ways that you can get that algorithm to get going. I would say if you don't normally post, do not get down on yourself if you don't get engagement. I mean, there's a lot of noise out on LinkedIn. So you have to make sure that you're standing out. I always call it as the obvious choice and the resource in your market.
Mm. Well,
Um,
some of those, and I haven't heard like the personal hashtag before. That's fun. That's something to think about. And I didn't actually know that people could follow hashtags on LinkedIn. I knew that they'd added hashtagging, and I've used that pretty consistently whenever I do post, but I love that. And I think just being aware of, obviously, the principal goal of LinkedIn is to keep people there, longer. Like,
Absolutely.
just paying attention to that is like, oh, well, then it's obvious that a link outward would go into the comments, not into the main body of the post, right? And doing some of these other things to drive engagement versus the flyby likes.
Right. Another thing that I used to do is, because after you kind of get your momentum, the algorithm just naturally thinks it should share with everyone. So once I get about 1,000 views, more like midday, if not within 2 or 3 hours, I will then go and edit my post, and I will attach the link there, because the algorithm
Oh,
the algorithm's already done its job with me. They love me, so they're not going to bother me.
got
So
it.
I do that with a few posts, especially if I'm trying to bring someone back to, say, a freebie that I have, or if I'm trying to bring them back to book a call with me, and I don't want to be bothered, because once the conversation starts happening in your comments, it can get lost.
Yes.
I've had a freebie before. I did a video and I did a freebie, and so many people reached out. They didn't reach out, they left comments. How can I get this freebie? How can I get this freebie? The hard thing, you'll lose some people because you may link it to their comments, or you may reach out to them and they never come back on the platform for weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another trick you can do.
No, I like that. That is a super ninja trick, adding it back into the main post.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yes. Well, and I have had that experience. I get on at least weekly, but usually multiple times per week onto LinkedIn, and but regularly, like when I reach out and message folks, I'll have people, get on a month later and be like, "Oops, sorry, I don't get on here that much," right? So
Yeah.
that's a pretty frequent experience.
Yeah, it was funny the other day, and I must have been launching a course, and this is kind of cool, that something you can do too. I reached out to this lady who was clearly my target market, and I said, "Hey, can we jump on a call?" 2018, by the way. Can we jump on a call? I'd love to ask you a few questions about something that I'm launching. I'd love to get your insight into X, Y, and Z. Monday, she replied, "Yeah, I absolutely love that." I couldn't help it. I had to be sarcastic. I said, Marjorie, for example, Marjorie, I sent this in 2018. Thanks anyway.
That is hilarious. Years. She's like, perfect. I'm finally ready.
How did she find it in 2 years later? Like, how?
I don't know, truthfully, because I have some of my, like with the way that the LinkedIn Messenger works, I can lose comments that are just a few days old, right?
Yeah,
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 I bet you have the same experience. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yes, let's jump on a call. Oh
yeah,
my gosh. Yeah, LinkedIn is funny that way. There is really a wide diversity of how people use that platform.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm almost guessing too that obviously this year has been the year that a lot more people have had to use LinkedIn, whether you're an employee, a business owner, or anything else. So now probably people are playing catch up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, that's just one guess.
Yeah. Well, and for people who haven't, because I'm curious, for people that haven't been using LinkedIn, like I've learned it fairly well as a tool that, does a great job of connecting me to people that I want to connect with. But for folks that are new to it, what are your recommendations around how to initiate the connecting, right? Because
Mhm.
you see people also using different strategies. You see some of the folks that I think are like open network or whatever they're called, and they will accept connections from anybody and everybody. And for me, I have a more kind of definitive strategy where I want to connect with either people that I can directly serve or
Mhm.
who our audiences are similar enough that we're going to be really valuable connections for each other.
Right. Yeah, I'm the same way. I always talk about 3 C's. There's potential clients, there's potential collaborators and people that
Mm,
work on something together, and there's potential champions. And the champions are the people who are well connected and they have access that you don't have access to, and they're just going to champion for your brand. That's all. I always make sure whether someone reaches out to me to connect, and whenever you reach out to someone, you always leave a note.
mm.
Hi Heather, I heard your last podcast about X, Y, and Z. I really loved, and very, very specific.
Yeah.
LinkedIn leaves enough information that you could say something to someone, because here's the thing, people are starting to get very not defensive, but they're very cautious about accepting connection requests because there is a spam party going on LinkedIn, with the wrong people learning the wrong thing. So if you leave a note and you share something very personalized for them, there's no way you can't get connected to the right people.
Mm.
Like you can get connected to, I don't have any idea how I'm connected to the CEO at Hershey Chocolate. Well, it's not just a chocolate company now, but yeah, things like that. So you can get,
Yeah.
I'm connected to Gary Vee. This was like a long time ago, maybe, before he got big on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Um, there was a instance where I was doing like a show. I used to talk about leveraging your X factor a lot. So I was doing like a Facebook live show. There was this one guy I reached out to. He was a speaker. He sent me his speaker reel because I was just asking them to send me their speaker reel. And because I wanted to help them as a speaker leverage
Mm.
LinkedIn as a platform. He sent me his speaker reel, and I was like, I got intimidated right away. I was like, whoa, who is this person? I don't know who he is, but he is like amazing. His last name was Robbins. It was his son. It was Tony Robbins' son. He said yes to a Facebook Live interview with me, by the way.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I was like, it's so hilarious that I didn't connect the two.
Yes.
But as soon as I saw the last name, I said, but of course, that's why he's so brilliant. So yeah,
Mm.
simple things like that. If you come off as they're human beings. We always
Mm.
put people on pedestals. I don't even do that at this point. But if you treat them like they're human, then they will reciprocate, right?
Mm.
I found something quite interesting. I found like, the Jarek Robbins of the world, and I'll reach out and say something like that. And he's like, sure, that sounds like a lot of fun. Just let me know. I'll send it to my assistant. But then you have regular people on Facebook who are into themselves, and they're like, well, tell me who else you'll be interviewing. Never mind. It's not,
Right.
I don't have, I'm not going to tell you that I'm interviewing Oprah too. Okay.
Right. No, you raise a really important point. This point about treating each other like we're human, right? Like the one thing I find fascinating about LinkedIn is, even though I love it, and I'm also glad you raised this issue of the big spam party going on, is that there are times where I'm like, who is giving this advice to do this thing this way? Like, this is terrible advice, In 1 week, I got connection requests, from like 5 different people that all had the exact same templated language. And I was like, what platform, what little mini, back end bot system are you using that is sending the same? Like, that's when I will get like, nope, nope, nope. Like, you are not, because I'm on here to create actual connections. Like, I am not interested in somebody's bot
Absolutely.
system. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're clearly not interested in you. And
Right.
sometimes I even look, one thing I do when I kind of, filter out my people, I look to see if they've been active on the platform. I had someone reach out to
Mm.
me who's a LinkedIn expert, air quotes I'm using. They had 282 connections and they have never even posted once on the platform. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we're not going to do this.
Right. No, and I'm the same way. If they're not there, like showing up and being legitimate and doing business on LinkedIn, like, it's just not going to be a great connection for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad to hear that people have standards. But for me, it is, I get very curious about who's out there in the marketplace teaching people, like, and I've heard whole strategies and systems around, like, send the first message and show them all the ways that you can be helpful for them. And and it's like, who loves to receive a link to like 5 different articles like the first time you meet somebody? Would you do that to them in person? No.
Exactly. Right. And you'd even ask if they were interested. Like, suppose I'm not that interested, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that, I know of one Facebook coach who is like giving out these LinkedIn templates as part of their freebie. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that, hi, Heather, I see that you're an attorney. I help attorneys get 5 to 8 clients per day. What would another client in your world feel like? No, we're not
Yeah.
interested.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yeah. When you're being sold right out of the gate, it feels like, would you do this to somebody to their face? Like, that's the question. Would I do this to somebody's face? Like, if the answer is no, I shouldn't do it anywhere online either.
Absolutely. And if that's the way that you're doing business, now I know you're going to water down my brand. If you're my lead gen person, are you going to be spamming other people with my offer? So
Mm.
no, never mind.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yes, I have to laugh a little bit because I tell people like, yeah, I love LinkedIn. And some people have horrible experiences like that. And they're like, oh, I don't know what to think about that. And I'm like, oh, you just disconnect or don't accept the connection or whatever. Like, it's no big deal. Move on.
Yeah, it's about being very discerning with who you connect with in the first place. You
Totally.
don't know that when you first get on the platform because you're supposed to connect with people.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes. No, I love that. Well, and I love the search functionality of LinkedIn, how even on the free version, you can save searches that will then automatically deliver lists, to your email. So for example, the folks that are in the industry that I either love to serve or connect with are information entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, online educators, speakers, authors, right?
right.
And podcasters. I mean, people call themselves different titles, but that's really the group of people. And like, you know, I'm not looking for an electrician in Virginia. Like, I probably can't help him with his business or be a powerful resource for him, right? And so I think some people make the mistake of feeling like they have to accept every connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to people that are like, oh, I just, but for me, I choose to use it very intentionally, and so far it's worked really well. I've still got lots to learn about it, but I've loved it as a platform.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit about, because you've got some phenomenal highlights from your career, right? You've got a long, rich background. You've been featured in various places. Talk to us about how you've done that, how you've gotten these big features, right? You've been featured in the New York Times. You are very popular on podcasts. You're an innovator. So I would love to hear a little bit more about that storied background.
Well, here's my strategy. I'm
Mm.
the youngest child, and I expect to get what I want. All right, so let's be real. So that might be a little bit of it.
I love
I'm
it.
always surprised when someone says no to me. Like I'm getting used to it now, clearly, because when you're a business owner, everyone's going to say no at least once. Um, so a lot of things it involves putting myself out there.
Mm.
There's a lot that I'm afraid of when I'm doing it, but I do it anyway, especially when
Mm.
you know you can help people. So I have a background in public relations, obviously. So that helps a lot. I don't like writing press releases. That's why I never really went into the PR field, but I know how to use words to have conversations
Mm.
and understand what people really want. And I love the aspect of human behavior. So I think it's more about understanding, especially I'm sure you get a lot of people pitching you of, I could be great on your podcast and this is what I can do and I can do. But no, what can we do for the audience? So I
Mm.
think when you're having conversations with people, it's making sure that they understand the benefit that would work for them. So I think the big thing, obviously, is positioning yourself as an industry expert, because who doesn't want to be in the same world as an industry expert and an industry resource? So I think that's the important thing. Putting out, for me, it's putting out content that's going to make people think,
Mm.
and give them enough information that they can. And there's a point of giving too much information, because some people who are do-it-yourselfers, they think they can figure it out. But I think LinkedIn's not one of those things where you just figure it out on your own. So I make sure I say that all the time. But it's giving enough information that someone can get to the next step, and others
Mm.
see me, like the event organizers see me, the podcast hosts see me, and different people see me that I'm giving and I'm sharing with my audience, and that my audience, they're really engaged, and then they reach
Mm.
out to me.
Mhm.
There's a lot more I can be doing to show up. I'm going to start doing a lot more video. I would encourage people to start doing more video. It doesn't get the highest engagement, but when the right people find your video, they connect with your voice, they connect with your eyes, they connect. Like I use my hands a lot. I'm a New Yorker, so people love when I say New York. So I think just people being able to get to know you because they can't get to know you otherwise helps.
Yeah. Well, yes, the video, I find the same thing. There's really nothing else you can do in lieu of video except be face to face, right?
Yeah.
That gives you the same experience of the person. So it is really powerful when you can use that. And I say that, and I have not yet utilized video on LinkedIn the way that I should, right? What
Yeah.
tips do you have about going live or posting videos on LinkedIn?
Well, for you especially, I don't know if you convert any of your material into video. You can actually repurpose bits of your podcast, right? And they do the audiogram. So whether it's just showing a picture of yourself and just doing like little snippets and then a
Mhm.
link to the actual podcast, I think that would be great. Obviously, you have the platform to interview people who are experts in their field, and when you do that, then of course you're associated with that expert. So I think the big thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be live. LinkedIn Live is an interesting format because I don't think they have it necessarily figured out yet. You have to go through a third party. So
Yes.
I think it could be as simple as recording something with someone else. And not only now you're getting in front of their audience because they're going to share it with others, but then your audience sees that you're associated with that person and you naturally kind of elevate your brand.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Well, and I particularly appreciate the point that you said about, because I think it's easy, especially to see somebody like yourself who's a thought leader, who's used to like showing up in big ways and be like, well, that just must be easy for them. But you said like it's still hard and I still do it. Like there are times where it still feels like a leap or a challenge and I still do it.
Oh
Right?
yeah. Yeah, most of the only because like I said, I get bored easily. So I have to something new has to happen. Like it's so interesting, obviously everything's virtual now.
Mm.
And so I've been serving clients. That's cool. I do LinkedIn profile overhauls. I do consulting with clients, but I was like, oh, I want to do like a speaking engagement. By the way, I only got into speaking about 2 years ago. I was definitely afraid of speaking. I never even wanted to do Facebook Live, and I love it now. And then, so I need to do things to really put myself out there. And someone reached out to me this morning to be a moderator for this panel that they're doing. So I was like, yes, something different.
I
Right.
love that.
Yeah. So that's kind of like one of the reasons I do it because I like to have shifts.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's
Yes.
the thing. Yeah.
No, that's fun. Well, I've got a couple of questions for you. One is, where do you like to connect online? Is it LinkedIn? Is it other places? Like for people that are listening and are like, oh, I want to go connect with Deborah. I want to see what she's doing. I want to follow her. Where do you recommend they find you?
LinkedIn obviously is a primary spot. They can connect with me by, of course, looking up Deborah Ashley with 2 R's, or they can
Mm.
do hashtag the LinkedIn Black Belt. I will be doing a lot more on Instagram now, especially with video, so they can
Mm.
search for hashtag. My name on Instagram is the LinkedIn Black Belt, or they can do the hashtag. So those two are going to be the main areas to find me.
Awesome. I love that. And I'll drop your social media links into the show notes. So for people listening, go to legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Now, Deborah, did you have a gift that you wanted to share with those who are listening?
Yes, I am a new author. The funny thing,
Woo!
thank you. Up until last year, people kept telling me to write a book, but innovator here, or maybe I was a little afraid. I kept saying, I'm not going to write a book because it's on trend. Everyone's writing a book. I don't want to write a book. But then I realized we're here on this earth to create this unique experience for people. And our voice is so different than anyone else's.
Mhm.
So I decided I'm going to put out a book. It's called Insider, How to Leverage LinkedIn to Stand Out as an Industry Leader. So I will be giving out the first 2 chapters to your audience. And the great thing about what I put out there, there's no fluff. It's
Yeah.
only 98 pages. I always say a book doesn't have to be 200 pages. If it's a 98-page book full of full content, full strategies, and I think that's a great thing for them.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So be sure to I'm going to go grab it. I've got way more to learn on LinkedIn, but I'm already such a fan of it as a platform. So make sure that you check out her gift, the first 2 pages of your book. And Deborah, what's your book called?
Insider, How to Leverage LinkedIn to Stand Out as an Industry Leader. The first 2 chapters.
Yes, no, I love that. I just wanted you to repeat the title because it's a great title. Um, what, so you're a leaper, you like change, you get tired of being bored. What's next for you? What do you see coming next in your journey?
I think next we'll be doing more video. Like that's a big challenge for me.
Mhm.
The big challenge initially was to do the public speaking, but to do video, I want to have at least twice a week. I want to do video on LinkedIn. Maybe I do it once a month, if that much. So that's
Mhm.
going to be the big thing for me. And I don't like to plan anything else. Like I know what I want, like a beach house in Costa Rica,
Right.
but I'll see what comes to me next.
I love that. Well, video sounds like a good challenge. That's still one that I'm working on as well. Um, Deborah, it's so great to connect with you and hear a little bit about your story. I know it's just the tip of the iceberg, but I'm so glad that we got to connect and share some of your expertise with my audience, especially around LinkedIn. Like, I'm a fan of it, and I know that I'm still not utilizing it fully. So, super excited to follow you online and check out your first two chapters of the book. Really appreciate connecting with you today.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.